Fuse Audio's VCE-118 is an emulation of the DBX-118 Dynamic Enhancer. This hardware unit was originally created for the home user market but has become very popular with mixing engineers. Its sound is extremely similar to that of the renowned DBX-160 VU compressor, and it has a similar setup, which means no attack and release controls and using a threshold and ratio to tweak the compression. The main difference is that the 118 can compress and expand, whereas the 160 is a compressor limiter unit. I have worked with a few DBX hardware compressors, and I own a 160A and original 166. I would describe the sound of a DBX 160 series as having rounded off highs and a very present snap and thump to the compression. Ideal for especially drums, and that is the main focus of this video. Let's see how it performs. We'll start with checking this next snare. The original snare is already played aggressively with rim shots. The sweet spot for compressing with a DBX compressor is usually with a ratio of 4:1. Here's the VCE-118. The typical DBX snap is undeniable, and the DBX sound is here as well. It has that rounded off high end and has a certain smooth quality. I would call the character wooden. The attack and release are somewhat program dependent, which means attack and release will change depending on how loud the incoming audio goes through the compression circuit. Ray, the developer of this plugin, shared this graph with me. It's basically how the VCE-118 sees incoming audio. This is somewhat weird to wrap your head around. It makes more sense when I flip this graph. You now see that incoming louder spikes in transients will trigger faster attack times. And here you see typical linear release behavior with a smooth fade into normal levels. Let's put the VCE-118 against the DBX-160A I have in my studio. There will be differences since my DBX is from 2006 and the original DBX-118 from the 1970s, and the VCE-118 is modeled after that. Here's the DBX-160A. Here's the VCE-118. They undeniably sound very similar. With these settings, the hardware DBX-160 has a bit more snap, and the VCE-118 is slightly brighter, which you can mostly hear in the hi-hat bleed. When working with the DBX with that rounded off sound, I usually put a EQ before the compressor. I EQ in such a way that after compressing with the DBX, the resulting sound is what I want. It sort of compensates for that roll-off and uses the characteristics of a DBX compressor to get a much better final result. I did it here with the next snare. Let's start with my hardware DBX-160A. Here's the VCE-118. Let me A-B. Yeah, there are differences for sure. The VCE-118 has more snap like this, but you absolutely hear that both share a very similar character. The main difference for me is that the hardware sounds more consistent in its compression overall. There's most likely a form of clipping and saturation happening inside the 160A. With the VCA-118 I feel like I need to insert an extra limiter. Here's the nice thing. The VCA-118 has this sort of built in. The HR dial sets above which threshold you get this specific analog clipping. It increases harmonics quite a bit as well. Now, these harmonics are extremely well done, no signs of aliasing at all. That's because this plugin uses ADAA in combination with 4x oversampling. When I increase the clipping with the headroom dial, the VCA-118 sounds even closer to my 160A. Let's compare the Fuse Audio VCE-118 with the Waves DBX160 and the Softtube VCA compressor. All these compressors use a ratio of 4:1 and the thresholds have been set to not work during the bass drum bleed. It's the same for all. Output gains have been matched. Both Waves and Softtube are more aggressive and a bit brighter than the Fuse Audio. The Waves and Softtube have a different attack and release time as well. They sound like the threshold is higher and it's slamming more. The release on both is very hearable as well, and overall the bleed is more unsteady sounding. Here I have adjusted the threshold of the Waves and Softtube to have the compression on the snare sound more similar to the VCA-118. Even like this, both the Waves and Softtube are further removed from that typical DBX sound and are more like a generic VCA compressor. Especially in the bleeds with the hi-hats, the difference is big, but maybe you like it. The VCE-118 has a switch to run in two different modes. Until now you have heard the plugin in the above mode, which is like in a regular compressor where the compression only works above the threshold you have set. With linear mode, you basically throw out the threshold. The compression is applied at all times, regardless of volume. This gives some huge over-the-top compression. Use the mix dial to blend in the original audio for some nice parallel compression. You can even take this a step further by turning down the headroom dial. The plugin starts to distort and you get a Soundtorch decapitator and Develock type of sound. This doesn't mean that the threshold is useless in this mode. It still does above type compression, but you hear a big difference in the release. The compression is always happening. Now I mentioned at the start that the VCE-118 also does expanding, and you simply have to turn up this dial to get into the expansion ratios. Both in above and linear modes you get expansion. With linear you get the expansion way earlier. A nice trick is to turn expand up and headroom down for distortion. Then blend that in with the dry signal. Now of course the VCE-118 doesn't work on drums all alone. Let's use it on my voice during the sponsored segment of this video. DistroKid is a popular choice for musicians looking to get your music onto streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. It's fast, easy to use and of course affordable. Plus with DistroKid you keep 100% of the royalties you earn. Give it a try and see why so many artists are using DistroKid to distribute their music. Get 7% off of your first year by using my link in the description of this video. All in all, I truly believe that the Fuse Audio VCE-118 is the best DBX compressor plugin right now. The sound is spot on and the snap is excellent, and you get 2 compression modes, clipping and expansion on top of that. Highly recommended.